Hey guys, welcome to today's video where we'll be previewing the Clemson Tigers. Last year I predicted them to go 11-1 with a 7-1 conference record, and they actually went 8-4 with a 4-4 conference record. It was a pretty disappointing year for Clemson, especially by their standards. It was one of the few times under Dabo Sweeney that they've not won double-digit games, and the first time since 2011 that they haven't won at least 10 games. So, overall, Clemson seems to be taking steps back since their national championship game appearance in 2019 and then their two national title wins in 2016 and 2018. Since that national title win in 2018, they lost one game in 2019, the national championship, two games in 2020, 3 games in 2021, 3 games again in 2022, and 4 games in 2023. So as you can see, the losses have been stacking up. There hasn't been a year where, they went 11-1 like I said they would last year, and you say to yourself, well, they've clearly improved from last year. And that's kind of the story that is developing around this year. Obviously, Vegas has them picked to be in the ACC championship game, but I'm not too sure that that's the case. Your departures, Will Shipley was a big part of that offense last year that really struggled in a lot of situations against Duke, against NC State, and really, I think that's a huge loss for Clemson, and finding offensive production this year is going to be a big thing for them. Also, Jeremiah Trotter, Nate Wiggins, Toriano Pride, Jake Orhoro, and Tyler Davis, Xavier Thomas, Andrew Makuba, they're all gone from the defense. Big losses, but Clemson has been a very strong defensive team ever since Dev has been there, and they've really had one of the best defenses in the conference. So I'm not too concerned about the defensive losses, but the offensive losses definitely. Key rivals: linebacker Sammy Brown, wide receivers TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco, tight end Christian Bentancur, edge Darian Mayo, cornerback Corian Gibson, interior offensive lineman Elijah Thurman, safety Tavoy Fagan, and Noah Dixon. But yeah, the offensive woes last year, you don't really have a big receiving threat that's on the roster right now. Obviously, TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco could step up into that role, or someone that's already on the roster coming back from last year could definitely step up in a way that maybe Kevin Concepcion did for NC State last year. He was a 3-star recruit freshman that kind of grew into that role as the year went on. And that certainly could happen for Clemson with a TJ Moore or Bryant Wesco, or even a Christian Bentancur at the tight end position. But I really don't see a big established threat on Clemson's roster at this moment. And you saw from the spring game, the defense looks really, really good, but Cade Klubnik and that offense looks like they could really struggle, especially when they meet a defense that has a similar caliber to what Clemson has. And we're going to get to that when we go to the schedule. But still, no transfers in. Dabo still refuses to use the portal. And I'm curious to know what Clemson fans think about that, and if they think that if you don't win double-digit games this year, you have 4, maybe even 5 losses this year, does the program start to think about, moving on from Dabo? I know he has a very large contract, and the buyout would be an insanely high number even at this point, but do you start to consider that? I know Clemson has a lot of resources for their football program, a lot of support, a lot of boosters. I think if need be, they could get the money to fire Dabo if they felt like they needed to. So I'm curious to know what people think about that. Strengths, obviously, I have your defense, one of the best defenses in college football. They've had it since forever. In my mind, I've been watching college football pretty consistently since 2013, so I've only known Clemson's defense as being elite. Um, and weaknesses, offense. I don't really trust the offensive consistency of Clemson. I haven't since Trevor Lawrence left. I don't think Cade Klubnik is going to be a game winner for you. He can't lead that game winning drive. We've seen it these past 2 years with him. And I think that's where you're really going to struggle a lot. But let's get into the schedule. You start off week 1 against Georgia. And in all honesty, I have to have you down for a loss. Georgia was the runner-up for the SEC. They're a really strong program now with Kirby Smart there, Carson Beck, and the defense that Kirby has implemented. They have so much talent on their team. They have a really good running game with Trevor Etienne, who's Travis's brother. And I think you take a loss. I really don't see you winning this game, especially with how Cade Klubnik performed last year and in the spring game. He doesn't look to have improved enough to have a prolific passing game against the Bulldogs. Phil Maffa will be a legitimate rushing threat this year, but he doesn't have that same duality with Will Shipley, where Will Shipley was a little more shifty and speedy, whereas Phil Maffa is more of a power back. I'll be curious to see how you balance the rushing and passing attack and who really becomes the first and second down back for Clemson. Because Phil Maffa, in a short yardage situation, both on third down or in the red zone, he's a great option. But who do you have in that 1st and 10 or 2nd and 7 situation? It could still be Phil Maffa in a lot of those cases, but I think you need someone who's a little more speed-oriented. Just curious to see. Then you play App State. App State has had a couple upsets. Obviously, they had the big Michigan upset in 2007 and then Texas A&M a few years ago. Other than that, they've played Power 4 opponents and haven't really been close other than that one time against Tennessee and Penn State. I think you will get the job done here. It could be a close game, but I imagine that your defense will be enough to shut down the Mountaineers to the point that you win comfortably, possibly 17 points or more. Nothing to worry about. And then you have your bye week, and then you play NC State. NC State, I think, is one of the dark horses to play in the ACC championship game and possibly win the conference. I think they have a really strong rushing attack with Kendrick Raphael and Jordan Waters being a sort of speed and power dynamic that I was talking about earlier. And they have a really good passing attack with Kevin Concepcion, Wesley Grimes, Noah Rogers, Dakari Collins, and Justin Jolly at the tight end position with Grayson McCall throwing to them. I think they have a decent defense. Obviously, if they can get the linebacker position developed enough to where they're playing at least near the level of Peyton Wilson was last year, they'll be a very good team. And I think this early in the year, even coming off of a bye week, it's going to be a big defensive slugfest. But NC State makes enough offensive plays in Death Valley to get the win, and you start off the year 1-2. Then you play Stanford. Stanford is going to be one of the worst teams in the ACC and the Power 4. Nothing to worry about here. You're at home. Easy win. Then you go at Florida State. Florida State is the reigning ACC champions. They have your old quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, who kind of got a lot of the blame a few years ago for the Clemson offensive struggles. And clearly now we've seen with Kate Klubnik and how those have continued that it wasn't solely on him. And he'll definitely be looking for revenge against the Tigers. You're on the road. Florida State is a much more complete team, in my opinion, than Clemson right now, and you take the loss. Then you go on the road to play Wake Forest. You've had a few close calls with them in recent years, but they've really taken a step back since Sam Hartman left 2 years ago, and then Mitch Griffiths took over, and he did not play up to that level, and now he's gone, and they brought in Hank Buckmeyer. They'll have a few weapons with Donovan Green and Damon Claiborne, but really nothing to worry about against Wake Forest. You'll get the win. Then you play Virginia. Tony Elliott was the old offensive coordinator during the national championship days. Though Virginia, again, not a very tough opponent. I think you'll easily get the win at home. Then you have your bye week, and you play Louisville at home. Louisville, after coming off of that ACC championship game appearance, will still be a decent team with Tyler Shaw, the journeyman, at quarterback. Every time, though, that Louisville and Clemson have played, Clemson has won. I don't think that changes. You're at home. Louisville will be a bit worse than they were last year, and you get the win. Then you go on the road to Virginia Tech, another team that I think is a dark horse to play in the ACC championship game. This will be the game that confirms that Virginia Tech is going to be a contender in the future years in the conference. I think they get a big statement win against Clemson, and you take another loss. Then you go on the road to play Pittsburgh. Again, another team that I don't expect to be very good, and I think you get an easy win. Then you finish off the year with two teams from the Palmetto State, Citadel and South Carolina, and I think you get wins against both of them. Citadel, a triple option team, not very good at football. I think you handle them very, very easily. And then South Carolina, not as much hype around them as last year. They lost Spencer Rattler. Not as much momentum. You're at home. You usually beat them when you're at home, apart from 2 years ago. I think you get the win. And you finish the year 8-4 again, but this time with a 5-3 conference record. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.